Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Hope everyone is doing well today. So Masa is proudly to present the Malaysian Architecture Education Online Lecture Series. So this is our third lecture so far, and thank you for joining us in the morning. So MASA stands for Malaysia Architecture Student Alliance and is a non-profit student committee acting directly under PAM, which is the Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, consisting of students representative from all architecture institute in Malaysia. So during this time of MCO, MASA and PAM have decided to launch this online lecture series for students to be more productive and gain more insights. So my name is 𝐀𝐫.𝐐𝐡𝐚𝐰𝐚 MASA representative from UCSI University, and I will be your MC for today. So I would like to welcome our guest speaker for today, Architect 𝐀𝐫.𝐐𝐻awarizmi. So Architect 𝐀𝐫.𝐻awarizmi is a firm believer in continuous discipline of honing the craft of design thinking. He is obsessed in simulating the paradoxical state in intervening layers of scenarios with the social physics. He was trained in University Technology, Mara, and had additional academic experiences at the University of Technology, Sydney. The ADIS Metropolitan Laboratory in Berlin and Politecnico di Malino in Milan. So he runs multiple practices as Director of Practical Architects, the Principal of 𝐀𝐫.𝐻awarizmi Architect, and Partner of Research Think Tank MDR-XA. In his academic career, he has lectured for 7 years at UiTM, Taylor's University, and UCSI University. He is actively partaking in design competition and has won over 40 competitions to date so far with various tiers from students to professional categories. He is currently the Malaysian representative in Ar.Qhawarizmi Committee on Young Architects, a recipient of Khazanah Design Residency, PAM Chan Sao Lai Award, also known as PAM Silver Medal, and PAM Johnson Swiss Scholarship Award, and among others. Okay, so enjoy and relax, everyone. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the talk, but feel free to leave your questions during the talk if you have one. Okay, so Architect 𝐀𝐫.𝐻awarizmi, how are you?
Good. Good morning.
Good. Yep. All right. So I'll pass the floor to you.
Right. So I will try to be quick due to the fact that there's a lot of things to cover. So I will not actually explain one by one, or some slides I will just skip. This is back in December 2012, and I have just recently visited this thesis on behalf of PAM with the request from PAM Education Chairman, which is Architect Ajanta. And I thank MASA for having me today. So, straight into it, I mentioned that I try to finish it before the 60-minute period. So this is some of the people that actually has contributed their time and effort to help me through this education, this education period. Special thanks to Tuan Syed Sobri, and of course Wan Azaz, Wan Sulaiman, and of course the rest of the names listed here. I grew up playing Doom 2 in my father's computer in Windows 95. I'm not so sure if you know how Windows 95 look like, but it's simpler
Yep.
days. It's a intrigue thing to experience. I did play it over 1,000 plus hours, I would say. This is easily one of the generic snapshots of the game. It's fairly gore. The premise is very simple. There's a base in Mars, and they just open up a portal to hell, and these monsters coming in. And this game teach me really to not giving up, just keep on trying harder and harder difficulty. And it's not actually a game for child, I would say, is gory. There's a lot of blood and etc. But the most important thing is actually is the perception of space. This is one of the revolutionary game that actually tried to simulate a 3D world using 2D methods. So basically, in real world, we have these three axes, but in the world of the computer back then, we don't have that. So we don't have this super powerful, graphic processor like today. We don't have, I think the RAM was not even 1 gig. So this is how it looks, and this is how it is constructed. Actually, there are 2D planes that actually been tempered according to the perspective point. So you can see that actually they have to draw each strip of pixelation to get that particular image. So moving on, I do play a lot of games, to be honest, growing up. And these games actually, these two games especially, is a bridge to bond with my father, to be honest, because we obviously, as an adult and child, we don't have much common thing to talk about. But since we do play these games, we, at least we have something to talk about. So surprisingly, this trading card game is very interesting. And of course, Diablo 2, I think, is quite a famous game. But there's two type of game that you can win, and game that there's no such thing as winning. The goal is to keep on playing. So this is the type of game that there's no actual winning. This is SimCity 2. So you can see that, I mean, graphic is fairly archaic. This is on PlayStation 1, if I'm not mistaken, and also, but I do play it in PlayStation 1, but there's also a PC version. But this type of game of city building simulation or whatnot has grown into more realistic. This is City Skyline Sunset Harbor, which is the latest one. So you can see that there's a lot of information laying down in the city. And some of these, I would say my games look like work and my work look like a game, I would say. I mean, drawing plans, coloring them, modeling is sort of like a, playing games. And this city can be dissected by layers, of course, green spaces, traffic, and there's a lot of things to learn. And this is my personal Steam account. This is some of the games that I play. I'm sure all of you has clocked in more hours than me, but I play a substantial amount of, volume of these two popular games, I would say. So I know that Thesis is something that you have to dwell into it at least for a year. So I would say the best thing to do is to actually sort of give a homage to my favorite pastime, and thinking about how game is actually something that, I mean, at that moment of time, 7-8 years ago, it's not necessarily a positive light. There's a lot of cases. I mean, the game that I shown you, Doom 2, actually inspire students to, high school student in the US to actually do a mass shooting in the school. So game is not actually, have that positive light. But I know that for thesis project, I need to find something that I found interesting, passionate, and also something that I know a little bit more than the tutors. So that's why I choose video game. So basically, the idea was to investigate the beginning of games. So games, of course, video game is a subset of games. So games is actually starting with all these more physical attributes. This is Senet in Egypt. Basically, they use dice. And the dice is made of bones and stone. Okay, backgammon, and of course, we try to do things that actually can be comparable to one individual to others. So we have a bit more of physical sport in terms of wrestling, who are tougher, who are stronger or more powerful, and eventually we get more and more physical games, such as what we call today as sports. Physical game, what we call today as sports, such as running, jumping, all these things. And of course, as we grew the technology to mass husbandry, to cut it short, of horses, cow, and stuff like that, we included animals into the game. And more strategic games such as chess and Go in Japan is actually more related to strategic thinking during the feudal war. And then of course, as we discover technology of printing or producing similar product, identical product in mass, okay, we created dominoes and playing cards. And as Industrial Revolution came, we mass produce standardized item like tennis balls. This is curling. Curling is fairly sensitive. The objects or the curling balls needs to be, the curling disc needs to be calibrated, has the certain density, certain weight, certain circumference. So all that made possible during this Industrial Revolution. And of course other things such as billiards, snooker, stuff like that. So you can see that progressively games has been following very closely to technology. And this is actually the first game, more or less. This is a PhD studies of Willie Higginbotham. Okay, basically the idea was actions outside the this machine can influence the display of the machine. So this is actually a machine that register voltage or current graphs. So he said that if we could do that, we can alter the voltage, or we can alter the current that going through a machine, and it can influence what is being displayed. We can actually create sort of like interactive between man and machine. So in one of the earliest game look like this, is sort of like a wireframe kind of situation. So obviously if you look at the screen, actually there's nothing there. There's no marks, there's no like button and or keeping tabs of level. There's nothing. It's just an empty screen with a sort of a wireframe of spacecraft floating around. And in 1970s, there's a lot of positive psychological theories coming out. So what happened before 1970s is that a lot of psychological research is all about the negative psychological field. For example, like stress, bipolar disorder, all these things. But in 1970, there's a lot of positive psychological research. One of them is self-actualization. Abraham Maslow basically talk about how we can graduate from ourselves, thinking of other things, and of course it's inspired other research such as the new game philosophy, talking about how video game or the new game philosophy should not have segregation by gender, segregation by age, but because if you look at the current sports dichotomy, there is some separation by gender. Of course, male will compete with male, female will compete with female, and there was separation of age, like under 13, under 18, under 21. I think it's fairly common. So in the new game philosophy, they're breaking down all that. So basically, if you look at video games, they are being designed based on this philosophy. If you look at video games, for example, Counter-Strike, let's say, like a 30-year-old can compete with a 10-year-old and it still be fair. Like Tetris or whatever, like 15-year-old can compete with 60-year-old and still be fair. Like male and female can compete and still be fair. So this is some of the movement back then. So another one is Buckminster Fuller, the world game, and after that, theory of flow. So basically, there's a lot of this is the world game by Buckminster Fuller. So there's a lot of gaming philosophy in there's a lot of philosophy in the 70s that gaming industry took. So I mean, of course, there's a lot of things to discuss, but we're moving forward. So one of the earliest game that actually popular or in the pop culture is Pong. Obviously, you can see that for the first time, due to the fact that all these positive theory, physical psychology theories, for the first time they have marks, like they have the motivation to show to actually win. They somehow use mark as a system. I mean, of course, this is replicating physical game, which is sports. Try to motivate people to do better by, giving the possibility of winning. And as hardware grew better and software grew better as well, we have color, and of course, colored screen has become a norm. Graphic hardware become better, more and more better looking games coming out. Yeah, as I shown here, Doom, Diablo, and whatnot. And the invention of internet has allowed us to have this crowdsourcing philosophy where people can actually influence the game due to the fact that game is getting more and more interactive. And this is, I think, very popular game. It is massive multiplayer online role-playing game. So basically, if you look at today, even today, the newest generation of people actually don't have any social media. I mean, kids, like basically they don't have any Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Oh, I'm sorry, maybe WhatsApp they do, but Twitter and stuff like that. But they have an account in online gaming and they make friends through online gaming. So in 2010, there's a book written by Jane McGonigal. She is a PhD holder in game design. Basically, she talked about how real life can be fixed by gamifying your life. So I'm not going to cover everything, but maybe we're just gonna, go through the fix number one, which is unnecessary obstacle. If you look at it, games is actually unnecessary obstacle. If you look at the objective of golf is to put the ball into the hole, right? So if you are in a real life, you will just go take the ball, walk to the hole, and put them there. But the game version of that objective is golf. So the game version allow you to have a stick as an apparatus, like of course the golf stick as an apparatus to get the ball to go into the hole. So game is actually making life harder by providing unnecessary obstacles. So in a way, it also helps us to think about problem solving and then using our own personal strength, developing that, eye-hand coordination if you are talking about golf, and talking about understanding how the climate works, the wind, of course in the golf, the situation and the environment of the golf course. So blah 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 blah. Of course, there is 12 fakes. If you have time, you can find the book. And she just come out with another one, super better. This is very recent. I have not finished the book yet, but I bought them, and this is like a continuation or sort of like a proceed from the reality is broken. And of course, after that, because of the continuous development of game has become more and more ambiguous. For example, this is popular back then, Foursquare, Nike Plus, Wikipedia is also actually a game to show who's smarter, because you can edit other people's articles, holding at home, free rides, investigate your MP expenses. This is in UK. So the game was, if you have evidence of MPs using money or paying stuff that they should not pay for example, like maybe a club expenses that they claim to the government. So basically you can invest your MP, and Ghost of a Chance, this is become an online curator of a museum. Quest to Learn, this is Bill Gates' initiative, making school as a video game. In terms of the game was, in games, if you are not satisfied with your high score, why not, you can retake or you can play that level again. So same goes to the school, you can retake the exam as much as possible to the point where you can get the marks that you want by keep on restudying, improving yourself, and then retake the exam, and then you can get better marks. And the assignment are also designed as game, like you will get clues. You have to find this book at this shelf, at this aisle, at the library, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of thing. So it's quite an interesting experiment. Chore Wars. And of course, in the increase of the performance and hardware in our mobile devices, game has become more social. I think there's a lot of Facebook games back then in those days. But the main trigger was the development of competitive esports. This is the thing that you have to understand. The benchmark of sort of physical games, which is like say tennis, they won $1 million if the champion will win $1 million. So why prize money is a threshold, or why prize money as is an indication of success or mainstream sort of credential? It is because the money is correlated directly to the amount of sponsorship that they get, the amount of viewership, the amount of popularity, worldwide popularity. Last time, if not mistaken, the international has 20-something million prize money. So it exceeds Wimbledon tennis tournament like by 20-fold. So is definitely stepping ahead of physical games, which is sports. So through progression of gaming history, it starts with pure luck, meaning that dice, cards, that kind of game, and then we progress to physical athleticism, which is sports. Of course, it's fairly popular. And now it's time for mental athleticism, which I frame this as a mental cognitive skill, which is to play games. You need to make thousands of decisions in a minute. So that's the what I call it, the development of people that actually play games. And there's a lot of philosophers that actually talk about the benefit of game. Actually, at this moment of time, our only salvation is actually to play games. Meaning that, for example, right now we are looking for COVID-19, vaccine. In a way, it is a game. I mean, you have the problem, which is you need to find a vaccine, and the game was what makes, or what kind of chemistry and an antidote that you can master to be a perfect vaccine for COVID-19. So this is the project. Basically, some location and also justification of site. I mean, the graphic is a bit dated. Forgive me. This is like almost 8 years ago. So Malaysia is good, have good currency. I mean, this is back then. It's stable. It's not that expensive. It's not too cheap. So it is has a good competitive factor. And then in this particular Klang Valley, where it should be, maybe since it's catering international guests, so 𝐬𝐬 seems a good spot. 𝐬𝐬 has a good internet connection, larger than normal bandwidth. They have a lot of data centers, services to host this event. And of course, it is also growing. I mean, right now it's a bit slow. I mean, back then they host a lot of international IT firms, and then basically around there, the population, the support system, because there is a component of retail as well. So the client will be PCOM. PCOM hold the the license to host world championship games. So basically, so a bit we are done with the client and whatnot. So the thesis actually talks about, if we the building is a building. The thesis, or sort of the argument, is a portion of the building, I would say. So this is it. So if we have 4 programs, we need 4 rooms, right? The problem is that these programs are happening once in a while. For example, in your community hall, it's only been used during the weekend, and then basically on the weekday it's not been used. So it's utterly waste of resources. What we do is that we try to get 4 different programs and identify the actual surface that service that program. So if you look at your room right now, the only surface that actually serve you is the floor. I mean, the wall is there, of course, to protect you from the outdoor, but you don't lean on the door. You don't actively lean on your wall. You don't actively hold or touch your ceiling. They're just there. So the only thing that we actually need is floor. So what if we took the floor of these four programs, four space, and combine them into a cube? So that's how it looks. And then when we want to use that, the other sides, so for example, we want to use the blue floor, we can rotate the volume. Okay. So the first thing that we have to understand, we need to create levels, new level or new definition of flexible space. The problem now is that a lot of conference hall, convention hall are defined by their size, meaning that it is flexible in terms of size. It can cater a small event, a medium event, a large event, and whatnot. But it cannot host different program that program with different nature. So if you look at the second argument, is that what we're trying to do is to create profile of different floors that allow us to accommodate different type of events. So instead of thinking of enlarge and shrinkage and expansion, we're thinking about like totally different subsets of programs. So this is more or less the argument. What we can do is that we have to manipulate a geometry. For example, we take a cube. If you look at this cube, now the red surface is the servicing profile. And if you rotate like this in the shape of a diamond, look like a diamond, the servicing profile has now gone up. But if we look at this example, if you rotate it 45 degree, like a cube can produce a triangle servicing profile. Meaning that if you need a space or you need like a space that require triangle shape, you can do that by having the same volume, which is cube, by rotating it 45 degree. And of course, if you rotate 90 degree into like a diamond shape, it will create this rectangular floor plate. So this is mass displacement as a method to influence or organize space. But that is a cube. What if you are thinking in a more complex geometry in terms of, in this particular case, hedron? Okay, hedrons, which we're going to talk about after this. Object like architecture has to be independent, can be rotated, can be transferred, can be moved. So it doesn't have that rooted nature. Architecture is quite slow, is fairly rooted in terms of product design. They are faster. I would say the first iPhone came out is looking fairly caveman looking compared to what we have today, but the house still remain the same. So architecture is fairly slow. So we need to somehow move the cycle up a bit faster. So all this, of course, we have to get some proof of concept. This is Prada Transformer. This is a sort of a small pavilion actually meant for Prada, of course. And then they have activities all around. And what they do is that they have to use cranes, 4 cranes, to actually rotate into these 4 different, they have seasons, right? So there are 4 seasons, so they're rotating every season. And basically they try to create a new configuration of the pavilion every quarter to make it look fresh as if like it's a new building. This is how it looks like inside. And then basically the floor actually help to become a wall for this particular auditorium, small auditorium. Another flexible space is this Thai Performance Arts Center by OMA as well. So they have these 2 theaters at both ends, and basically they have this underbelly. Actually, it's a front. It is a back of house of those 2 main theater. But if there's a need to create this super theater, they can connect them and then basically have this 360 performance experience. Another interesting precedent is this. Basically, they want to reconfigure this gaming studio offices by creating circulatory veins in the middle. What they do is that they make sure that each floor goes up to the next floor going through a program. So they're going through this theater from, they traverse 2 floors, maybe from ground to level 2 and level 2 to ground, stuff like that. Yeah, so each program will have this traversing nature. So when you move through a program, you always change level as well. This is for the retail part. Of course, it looks like a volcano. Yeah, it's just basically fairly simple thing. And then this is an actual event. Yeah, in 2012. So the layout is fairly basic. There's a gaming area on the side, sponsor in the middle, and this is how the stage look. Yeah, this is where Tekken 5 take place. Is fairly yeah, it's fairly informal, I would say. So this is the subsets of quality of space that we want to achieve, and of course we identify. I mean, of course, based on games, there's a lot of games, but we need to identify competitive games such as, at back then is StarCraft 2, which is RTS, real-time strategy, or first-person shooters like Counter-Strike, stuff like that. And based on that range of games, we identify 4 stage configuration. This is user and program in relation to user, space, some of the space agency, and then of course the quality. And yeah, I think you can say this is like a bubble diagram, I would say, but we try to, we try to show that there is actually 3 components, and then the event block, which is going to be part of the special study. So this is a range of space. Yeah, I'm just gonna browse through. So we have a annual calendar. So we have a lot of events that we need to do. This is based on client's event calendar, which is PCOM. And then we have all these stakeholders, and also how do we make sure that it is financially viable. And of course, this is just rates and numbers. All right, moving on. I think we can go to the next one. So this is because I thought they're going to be separated by two portion, but it's okay. So this is the site. This is where it is located. It's in front of the 𝐬𝐫𝐤𝐢 police station, and then the position of the site, the condition, the sections of it, and then basically 𝐬𝐫𝐤𝐢, adjacent buildings, and of course linkages. Yeah, possible pedestrian route, possible view, and of course the surrounding. And this is some of the possible massing, because obviously first line in design will determine a lot of things. So in order not to make a mistake, we sort of like have to try out and then sort of create our own metric of evaluating this form. And eventually, of course, we have to draw it down, try to sketch on things that might go into the project, and some of the earlier sketch, how it look like. Obviously, there is a cantilevered plane on top, and then of course the main show is the tetrahedron in the middle. This is this is like a small portion, which is the office. This is how the office gonna be arranged. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. All right. So coming back to this, as I mentioned, we're not going to talk about flexibility in terms of size, but in terms of nature of programs. And I mentioned that if we manipulate by rotating, like a geometry, we can get a lot of servicing profile that actually tailor suit to your particular project. So particular event. So this is the event stages. Proscenium. Proscenium is actually like your typical lecture hall theater kind of thing. Truss is sort of like a fashion show kind of thing, with a straight stage. Arena is like a boxing match. Freeform is like a empty open plan floor plate. So first, if we want to create an object-like architecture, we need to make sure, since architecture is a structural entity, we have to ensure that it is stable at all sides. So the only geometry that actually could work is tetrahedron. Tetrahedron is actually a triangle. it is sort of like pyramid, but it has a triangle base. So there are four triangles. And basically what we do is that we can stamp on this stages or stage onto the triangle. We just have to make sure that the triangle has contact on all three sides, and make sure that all these openings later on that we cut to be the entrance. So this is how it looks. So this is supposed to be a complete tetrahedron. When you cut the end of the triangle, it creates this opening and create a possible entrance. So yeah, manipulation principle is to make sure it's touch, trimming, and then the entrance. And of course, this is how it looks. Yeah, so at the end of the day, if you look at this is a proscenium stage. Since the stage could be rotated in this particular ring, we have to use a jetway to ensure that it can accommodate the different height, the different position of the door, because the door changes in every mode, and there's a lot of electrical, vacuum, fire suppression system, smoke system, and of course air conditioning system. There's three emergency exit. So this red door is actually emergency exit, and of course I will show later how it works. And this is where the control room is to operate the rotation of this mass. So the rotation can't be physical. If you use a physical bearing, it will, because of the weight of this hedron is heavy. So we have to use a slow, magnetic levitation. So basically, it'll elevate the whole hedron and then rotate the hedron slowly. And then obviously, this technology is already proven. It's already been used in trains. So trains are also heavy, but of course, we are not going to move like train does. So we're gonna move like very slowly. And then basically, it is frictionless. So it doesn't have any friction. So that's the main point. So this is some of the drawings of the jetway and the hedron. So the jetway, obviously, again, has this extended neck. It could be, make it shorter, or we can make it longer. And of course, the stages, you can see the stages has different modes. In this particular case, has 4, and each of the mode has different jetway entrance level. So it will be calibrated before people enter the stage, of course. And this is how it looks. And underneath the jetway will be all the services running through, basically air conditioning, vacuum, etc., etc., etc. And this is the inside. It's fairly simple. It's a freeform hex. This is kind of what type of games can be played here. And the door is actually fire as a alternative fire escape. Of course, this is a place of assembly. There's a lot of people gonna be there. So we have adopted aviation technology once again. This is sort of like the slide that you found in aircraft. So it can accommodate 2 rows of evacuation at one door. So since we have 3 doors, hopefully it can be safe and basically provide alternative exit as well. So obviously with this kind of above and beyond approach, we have to be packed down by UBBL and all these building laws. But of course we took that as a challenge to create more creative solution. This is how it looks. And moving on, truss bar, as I mentioned, is like fashion show kind of thing. So this is how it looks. And you can see that other floor profile help to somehow become the wall. So this is the freeform hex just now, where the screen is. So the circle arena, of course, also feature the evacuation slide, and this is how it looks. Okay, meant for fighting games, stuff like that. Proscenium is a bit more traditional lecture theater hall kind of thing. But again, you can see the floor profile of the arena is here. And basically all the chairs are magnetized. So basically they are hold in place. I mean, of course it's bolted. What I'm trying to say is the chair, you know, it can open up. And then of course at the moment of rotation, they are magnetized. So in section, it looks like this. This is a free-form flat, proscenium, auditorium, and circle arena. So you can see that the volume can rotate in this manner. And of course, we have a horizontal ring as well to rotate horizontally. This is how it looks. The whole building is actually meant for gaming development. So in the middle here, we have retail. On top, we have developers, game developers, and on the ground is meant for experiencing games, VR headset, stuff like that. And the event will be conducted here. This is the parking with a bridge to the front. This is some of the drawings. I will just browse through because, you know, it's not that interesting. I would say just parking and then some area for exploration, retail. Of course, there's a huge void in the middle. Offices on top. This is how the elevation looks like. Yeah, so from the street, some sections, it's a bit purpley for some reason. And some of the more technical side of it, structural connection details, and basically we have to accommodate a lot of framings, and yeah, of course, more framings, more layers of material, and connection between RC structure and metal structure, and of course some joints and details. Construction sequence from foundation, piling, and to the top. Some of the GBI responses, and of course fire suppression system, electrical riser, electrical points, distribution box, transformer, genset, stuff like that. Water, fire, this is all active system, and of course some reports on fire and some calculation, which is, I think, it is fairly important for you to work, but at this moment of time, it's not an interesting scope of study to indulge in. Smoke spill system, calculating volumes, air conditioning system, yeah, waste and maintenance system, vertical transportations, circulations for lift, escalator, etc., etc. And this is how it looks. This is, I think, the final pinup, like the final pinup that we have. This is the boards of, at the back is the boards, and of course, the model is still here in this particular room. The model is at least like 2.4 meter or slightly longer, 2.6 meter long. So it is a sectional model. So this is like the front part of the model, and then this is like a half cut through the middle of the model. Unfortunately, the front part, I have thrown that away. The only part that is still here with me is the back part. This is the side model, the massing, and then of course the hydrant, and of course smaller massings, these two. So presented the work with Puan Syed as a paper for a conference, and it is in journal. And as the MC mentioned earlier, through this project, I won the Tan Sri Chan Sohlai Architecture Award, or currently known as FEM Silver Medal. Get into some publication, newspapers, magazines, stuff like that. And we have translated some of the content of the work into our series of publications. So basically, this is in Manifesto Juxtaposed. Obviously, my wife's thesis are fairly more popular, to be honest, vertical farming in manifesto farming, and we produce some of others manifesto as well as a medium for us to share our thoughts and you know what I call it, argument or creating discussions. And we just launched these two new manifesto as well. This is Manifesto Exchange, talking about our award-winning market design, and manifesto habitation 2, talking about, again, this is Gamuda 4.0 submission that we did, and we won 3rd prize. So this is all like the ideas and the principle of behind the project, because most of the time architects don't have time to actually lay down their thoughts and took the time to actually write down what happened behind the scene. So this is the means that we're trying to accommodate that knowledge transfer. I think that's all. Thank you, and then we'll proceed to the Q&A session. Wow, all right, 45 minutes. That's good.
Okay, thank you for the sharing. Okay, so we are open to questions now. If you have any questions, you can write down on the group chat, and we'll bring it up to the speaker. Yep.
All right. I think maybe for people that actually are going through or about to go through thesis lah, especially part 2 students, if any of you are here. And of course, this document is not like the actual thesis document that been submitted. This is like a bunch of like stuff being muddled together. I have to dig down files to get all the images. So yeah, I've been to UKM, and I've been industrial supervisor of thesis student in UKM. Most of them actually took subjects or issues that actually close related to their internal supervisor, meaning that the lecturers there in the school, which is okay if you have the same interest, or your where your mind is aligned with the lecturers. But if sometimes I saw that they have almost a half-heartedly taken a subject like tourism, just because of the lecturers very keen in tourism and have to write paper on tourism. So maybe you want to think of liberating yourself from that kind of dynamic. Rather than do that, better you find a topic that you understood, and then you always do that, or something that you enjoy, something you're passionate in. Maybe something that you used to do when you are a child. Because before I come to this, actually I'm thinking of doing a currency or fiat money museum / discovery center. But I don't know. At that moment of time, didn't know much about how currency work, or fiat money, or printing money, or paper money works. So some of the subjects might make you look like an intellectual, but again, it's not like it's not going to help you if you don't know about that particular subject well. So another thing is that always find a subject that has a lot of opportunity to design. Okay, for example, if you took homeless shelter, for example, obviously it's a homeless shelter. It is a facility of goodwill. It is facility run by a charity, or either welfare money or stuff like that. Obviously, you can't go far. You can't go all these crazy shapes or crazy ideas because of the humble nature of the particular project. So a project like this, like entertainment, of course, the most ridiculous design, like Las Vegas or theme park, is all within entertainment. So that's why another consideration that I took. There's the opportunity or the space to actually design and still make sense. If you took something very serious, like what do you call it, disabled related projects, very likely that you will have to, be super conservative and thinking of, the logic behind it. You can't design a homeless shelter look like a 5-star condo, stuff like that. So it's all, thinking of balance. Because in Taylor's, what I do is that I'm in charge of what do you call it, final year project for whatever the student wants to do, and then we're basically going to talk about it. And across the years, we have seen multiple, interesting projects, such as deaf care. How do we treat our disease? And then obviously some more risky type of project, like a place where you can eat illegal meat. I mean, of course, in China it's not illegal, but here, I mean, like bats and all this pangolin and whatnot. It's and even dog. So it spurs that kind of. It's not that. It spurs that kind of discussion lah. When it's a bit more interesting, we can talk about it a bit more. Like homeless shelter, it's not that homeless shelter is bad. It's just that it's there is a threshold lah where you can't go beyond that. You can't make it look like a Sunway Lagoon hotel or something like that. So yeah.
So to
Do you have questions?
Yep. Okay.
All right.
The first one is from Marcus. Yep. So his question is, for a building for esports, how do you tackle the issue with the current solution where competitions are being held on temporary venues and training being held at their homes? Is there a need to build a dedicated building for esports?
So yeah. This is exactly what we're trying to address. What happened was temporary venues always have this what do you call it, a price tag to it, meaning that after a show, let's say it goes maybe 3 or 4 days, and you have to broke it down and change another setup, or another event are coming in, for example, a wedding or whatnot. So in this particular hydran, you don't have to do that. I mean, if there is a wedding, then the freeform hacks will service that program. If you need a fashion show, then the Trust Bar will serve that program. And if you need that gaming arena kind of thing, where the players are in the middle, the Circle Arena will cater for that need. So the idea was to remove the temporariness of this what I call it, stages, and make a permanent one that basically have the ability to easily swap between these four modes. That's at least what I think.
Okay, cool. All right, next question is from Howie. Is it okay to change the thesis title halfway if I found out it is actually not that suitable or interesting enough? Do I continue what I have now?
Okay, first of all, I'm not your academic supervisor, so this is not like an advice that you can take action on. This is just like me as a friend. I think if you just want to change the title, I think that will be fine. If you are still holding on the same subject, let's say, I don't know, let's say child literacy. Okay, you want to talk about child literacy. Instead of focusing on the child, maybe you want to focus on the teachers. You want to train the trainers or something like that. I think it's fine if the subject is still within that range. But if you want to totally change your premise, your what I call it, subject matter, then I would say no, due to the fact that continuation, what I call it, continuity is fairly important, I would say. So yeah, it depends.
Okay, all right. The question is from Mayamin. What are your challenges? Yep. Yep. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. What are your challenges during the whole process?
I think the biggest problem with students is that, including myself, is they don't know where or they don't know when it is complete.
Mm.
Meaning that, of course, there will be some portion of the project that actually can be further developed. But I think the urge of how do I say?
Affecting.
Sometimes the thesis program wants to go right, another direction, and you yourself want to go to the exact opposite. For example,
Mm.
obviously the thesis coordinator or whatever, basically your lecturer lah, saying that okay, this is what we have to do for the next stage or next phase, and this is what you want to do. But obviously, in my own mind, I want to do other things, such as creating all this configuration, rendering or this internal space, how it looks like. Obviously, that is not under the the progressive structure of the program. So the challenge was to actually still comply or still satisfy the basic need that university asks you for their progressive creates or their progressive thesis movement or development. But of course, on the other side, you have to do something for yourself as well, something that you're really interested in, actually exploring the possibility of the hidden. That's, I think, the challenge, balancing between you and the uni, I would say.
All right, cool. Next question is from Farhan. He is a undergraduate student from UITM. His question is more to the process of the thesis. He's asking for tips on how do you control the process, time that you spend on each steps, seeing that you have a lot to tell in your thesis.
Actually, I would say for any design like exercise or design challenge that I undertook, I always try to find a moment where the design starts to generate itself, like become an automatic process. So in order to get there, what you need to do is to uncover or unravel a lot of clues. So there might be clues. Obviously, people do site analysis because some portion of the clue might be at site. But in this particular case, Cyberjaya being fairly an empty city, there's nothing from the surrounding to be captured. But of course, the main important point is to create the narrative going. If you look at the presentation that I did, I moved from my own personal childhood experience, moving towards the development of game from luck to become physical and physical become mental. So it is fairly important to create that narrative, meaning that you have to start your story somewhere. In my case, it's my childhood. Maybe you have other experiences. You can start with that and try to see yourself in the subject matter. So that's why I do not encourage people to, for example, again using the same example, to do homeless shelter if they never been volunteering or never be part of the NGO that help the homeless. So unless you can. If you can't put yourself there, it's quite difficult to get the process going, I would say.
Okay. All right. So next question is from Balkish. Do you have any specific interests you always look forward to work on every semester during your masters, specifically that intrigues your ideas every semester?
It's like this. Okay. Thesis. I mean, in a lot of students, when they do thesis, what they did is that they are thinking of designing a building. All right. For example, tourism eco chalet. Let's say that's the thesis. Okay. The thesis is the project. The project is the building, and the thesis talking about how a chalet works. Okay. To me, thesis is actually a portion where you contribute to society by thinking of new ideas. So of course the building is a building, but what is the idea? So the premise of the new spatial idea that I'm trying to introduce is actually how you can just take the floor and then make them a volume, and then you can rotate them as you please. So that's the portion where actually the thesis is all about, not the building. I mean, the building, of course, again, Yeah, so there's the physical form of it. So the
I
physicality of
see.
it is the building. The idea part of it is actually just the hidden, the spatial manipulation, the mass displacement can affect the geometry of the floor. That's the that's two parts. So in every semester, what I will look towards look forward for is that portion. Of course, in UiTM specifically, we've been asked to design housing. Of course, we have to design housing, the building, the physicality of the housing. But what is the idea? That's the portion that I always look forward to.
Okay, cool. All right. Next is your presentation focus more on executing your design via geometric exploration from manipulation and etc. Were there consideration actual spatial qualities, IG phenomenology during your thesis development?
Yeah.
As far as I know, Tuan
Mhm.
Siat is extremely a philosophical individual.
I think what you need to understand is that eventually you need to produce manifestation of that idea, right? So you need to physicalize, you need to crystallize the idea more or less. So of course you can talk about space could fly, space could mutate, all these things. But at the end of the day, you need to produce something. That's why in this particular case, I produced 4 models for the Hedron alone. Of course, if you want to model this directly towards a 3D software, it's fairly hard to appreciate and the panels will be having hard time to comprehend. But if you have them intangible models, I think I built them in 500, 300, 100, and 50. I think the final model that is in the elongated model, I think 75. So it's a good
Mm,
size for people to appreciate. And then and if not mistaken, I put human figure inside the Hedron for them to actually appreciate. Of course, spatial quality is fairly important. And the easiest way for you to demonstrate this thing is actually building models, because previously when we don't have parallel drawings, we don't have plan, we don't have section, what architects do is actually build a model like Coliseum or this huge monument and whatnot. They will build it inside a building. Okay, they're going to build huge model, and what they do is that they will ask the craftsman to pop their head inside the model to see the details of the building. Remember, go out and build that thing in the Coliseum. At site. I would say choosing your thesis project is actually like thinking of making a story. Okay, some thesis projects are so predictable. Okay, you already know the heroine and hero gonna get married. You already know. So in my case, in this particular case, the story is a bit more difficult. There's a concept underlying principle that we want to talk about, how to manipulate space. So when you want to do this kind of movies, such as like Inception, with all the theoretical, how the world works, how time and world, real world, real world, or stuff like that, the layers of the world, stuff like that. You need a little bit more explanation. So the story, the effort to make the movie or the story is a bit more taxing. So that's why we have to build more models than others. We have to produce more drawing than others. We have to produce more simulation or rendering than others. It's not the reason why. It's not the reason. The reason is not that we want to produce more. It's just that the idea is hard to be explained through just plan or just section. That's the reason why.
okay, cool. Okay, so we'll have maybe 2 more questions since we are running out of time. Okay, the next one is apart from the stadium tournament space being convertible, like the one in your thesis, how do we make the other part of the building more active and visited during off season?
Yeah. So basically, there will be a balance, I would say. Of course, even some of the panel mentioned that the building is a bit, the whole building as a whole is a bit too flamboyant. They would say, just keep the hidden and keep the rest like a rectangular or square, just to make sure that the hidden get all the attention, so that we can create some level of, drastic contrast between this portion and then the back. But of course, stability is not a bad thing. we still do need a stable toilet. We cannot have a rotating, toilet all the time. And we can't, we have to ensure that, for example, the retail area, right, there is leasing agreement, we are renting the space. So there will be some level of stability as well. But of course, interval events might happen there, like cosplay activities or demonstration of games, or demonstration new gaming apparel, stuff like that will still happen there. So I would say, of course, the retail will cater the students, the working people around the site, but there's no I'm not denying that obviously retail perform better over weekend. So yeah.
Okay, all right. So last question is from Douglas. When will your manifesto for your recent market city made available for sale? Secondly, what is your advice that you can offer to student whose thesis relates to reinventing a new market typology in one building complex?
So we need to address the issue of the fall of retail activities in recent years. Of course, there's a lot more vacant retail lots in shopping malls, but market has seen a good growth due to the fact that people start to buy fresh fruit from their local market. In line with, of course, right now we have this movement control order, but in normal days, a lot of market goers actually prefer to handpick their own produce, like which veggie, which fruit, stuff like that. So if you want to think of a new typology of market, you need to think of the actual produce. I think a lot of market has been designed with these standardized stalls, which okay, it performed okay, but if you studied a bit more on markets, we actually have studied 8. 2 in Johor, 4 in Klang Valley, and 2 in Penang before of course, when we are embarking into the market competition. And we found out that there will be always extension or addition of racks or addition of storage space by the vendors. So for example, people that sell seafood, right, they will have this ice box, plastic ice box. So it occupy a lot of space. So we need to think of how to deal with that. I think we don't have to look too far. We don't have to think of what market could be abroad or whatnot. If you look at what can we improve in today's market, in our local market, you can somehow reinvent a new market typology. Obviously, the manifesto has been. We will try to get a link. I think you can. Go browse our MDRXA web. I think we are selling them in bulk. If you buy them in bulk, you can get a hefty discount. If you buy them one by one, it will be a bit more pricier due to the fact that we have to, mail them separately. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's all for our question and answer session. I hope everyone gained insights through this sharing. Thank you again, Architect 𝐀𝐫.𝐐𝐻𝐺𝐻. Yeah. So do keep in touch with us for our next lecture series in our MASA's Instagram and Facebook page. So other than that, yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.